Solvente urbi et orbi. This is a Latin phrase that means greetings to the city and to the world. And it's a phrase that's been used by popes for over 2 millennia to make important announcements to the world. And of course, because it's in classical Latin, it means that the reference to the word city is of course Rome and the rest of the world, because Rome always came first. And for anyone that wants to study the Latin language, it's a bit of a difficult experience in comparison to studying modern languages. Well, what makes them so difficult? It's really a matter of having to use a number of different resources. So you need a dictionary, you need a grammar, and sometimes for advanced study, you need other resources. For example, for advanced study, you have the Oxford Latin Dictionary, which is about 2,200 pages, 9.1 pounds, in very tiny font. That's really what it's like, but it's the best Latin dictionary ever. I don't know what's more cruel, throwing this at someone or asking them to use it every day. But you also need an introductory tool like Wheelock's Latin. It's just a grammar book, but it has an appendix that also has dictionaries there. But it's a bit time consuming, it requires dedicated study, and it's not always easy to follow. And of course, you have to memorize lots of stuff. And for intermediate study, you need something like this, Ecce Romani, which is a reading class book, so you get snippets of actual texts, and you have a little dictionary, maybe on the side of the page or in the back, where you can reference terms that you're unfamiliar with. And when you get to really advanced study, you need what's called a word list or a word frequency list. There's one called LASLA, it's the biggest one. It doesn't matter how they made it, but they just counted up all the words and then ranked them. But it's written in French, it actually doesn't have any numbers because it's alphabetical, but sometimes you have to use it plus other lists. So these are the kinds of things we have to do when we study ancient languages. And we have to make use of many resources that all are different versions of a dictionary. And classical Latin is a pretty easy ancient language. With others, you have other challenges. In Akkadian, you have to understand what those scratch marks mean, because they represent sounds, and it takes about 3 or 4 steps to translate it. In Egyptian, you have to deal with hieroglyphs. So you need additional resources like sign lists and so on, just to get a footing of what you're doing. And of course, Greek, it's similar to Latin because they're from the same language family. So, it seems as though that ancient languages and lexicography have a very tight relationship. You can't study ancient languages without having several iterations or several versions of some kind of dictionary. So, my team and I wanted to work on this, and we wanted to make something better than a big stack of books. And when I started thinking about this, I was reminded by a very wise man on my podcast. He told me that people don't think of dictionaries as books like this, but they actually think of dictionaries as apps on their phone, as well as other digital tools. So I resolved that a digital tool was probably the best. But if you look at all the existing digital tools, they've got some problems. And you can summarize them as accessibility, usability, and scope. For example, these tools can be expensive. Even if you have them in PDF format, it takes a long time to go through them. Some of them you can't even access online. And of course, at all skill levels, these tools have a specific person in mind, an introductory student, intermediate student, and an advanced student. But those are the options. So, to reduce this matter to a smaller compass, we can just say that the problem here is that when you study ancient languages, there are special needs and unique challenges that have to be negotiated. And the solution that my team and I came up with was, let's reconsider the goals and priorities of dictionaries for ancient languages. And the plan we had to accomplish this was to combine resources into one tool, taking a big stack of books and trying to package it together into one resource that's available to a layman, but also usable for people interested in serious study. So instead of getting into the technical aspects of it, I thought it'd be more productive to illustrate what we tried to do on a very basic level. Who's familiar with what a Leatherman is? See lots of excited people, lots of hands. So a Leatherman is a tool just like this. It has a little grip, a shaft, and a handle, but then it has these instruments that protrude out of it. And each of these can help you do something else. You don't necessarily maybe need to use the pliers or the scissors or the bottle opener, but they're there in case you need it or you want to use it. So with building a digital tool to study classical Latin, we were trying to build a Latin multi-tool for Latin study. So instead of having a Leatherman with those instruments, we wanted something that could give us dictionary entries, grammar, example sentences, word frequencies, and other stuff. So technology aside, what we did here is really simple. We just took a bunch of the books that you see here, and we tried to redact information and package it together in a way that's easier for people to use. Which is why I'm very excited to introduce today Allo. Stands for Ancient Language Lexical Ossuary. An ossuary is a box in ancient times you'd put the bones of deceased ones. And if anyone's Jewish, I'm sure you've heard it in family traditions. And what it is, it's a modern dictionary platform for dead ancient languages. But we'll note the keyword here is it's not a dictionary, it's a dictionary platform. Because it's not just about having a dictionary, it's about other tools that are based around a language or group of words. And for Latin, we combined 7 books, 4 websites, and 3 data sets. And I'm really excited to take some time and show you a cool demo with some stuff that it can do. And this is just a list of the few minor features that we'll try to unpack as quickly as possible. And our first complete language is Allo Latin. 1,000-word dictionary of the 1,000 most high-frequency words. And this is the homepage. I'll send everyone the link so it's accessible, and I'll proceed with a demo. So it's a very clean user interface, and it's exactly what it says. You just learn classical Latin with modern and easy-to-use tools based on authoritative sources. We list all the sources just so people can understand where we're getting the information from, as well as the websites. For the actual dictionary portion, we have different ways that you can find the terms, and we have even different ways by part of speech, so forth, if you wanted to go through it manually. So jumping right into how we started today, we started with the phrase solvete, which is a plural imperative form of the verb solvere, which is to be good or to be healthy. In Spanish, it comes to us as salud, but it's when you say hello. And we see right here we have the head word here, and you immediately get the English translation. We have audio pronunciations.
Salve, salvete.
It's really important to get the pronunciations right because we actually don't know what classical Latin sounded like. And a lot of people, if you ever hear Latin and someone uses the letter V, like the, do not trust that person's input for Latin because there is no V sound, it's W, so it's solvete. And the same is said of the letter C, it's always K. So there is no Cicero, it's Cicero. And here, we have definitions from 2 sources. We went to Wheelock's Latin, and we pulled the basic definition that they had, and some English derivatives, so people can compare that. It's great for introductory students. And we also have the Oxford Latin Dictionary, which gives us a few entries. And you can see here the way it's laid out is we prioritize the simpler resource first. But let's say you wanted to read some sentences that might come from Eke Romano. Well, we have example sentences that you can then compare with Google Translate or the index. You just click the button here, and we can get our comparison from another tool because we believe in choice. And of course, you have the full bibliography here, and it shows you the exact page numbers where everything was sourced, and you can cite it because it's important to give credit to people. So for an introductory person, this is a great way to get your toes in the water without being overwhelmed. But let's say that you are interested in doing rigorous study. Let's say you want to see how frequently the word comes up. You see here there's 3 little squares that are in gray on the right side of the screen where it says specs and word metrics. Well, clicking on that pops up this pop-up, and it shows you how that word ranks according to 3 lists. The Laszlo list, BCC, which is a different list, and then a third one that's a little bit dated but still time-honored. And let's say that you did want to engage in the Oxford Latin Dictionary. You wanted let's just say you wanted the meatloaf. Well, you can click right here under See More Definitions, and it opens up the exact page from the Oxford Latin Dictionary on the right with the page number. But nobody can read this, so we don't want people to have to zoom back and forth. So we made it such that when you hover your mouse, it automatically gives you a zoom feature. So you can zoom in, see all the stuff, and it just works automatically. There's multiple pages, those multiple pages are shown. Let's take a look at another word. Vincere, which means to conquer. It's a more traditional verb. And here on the right side, a little green outline, we have conjugation details. And we have other grammatical information. And we see here in the word frequency rank that we have 3 boxes. And when you hover, it says that it's a common word. We did some math according to how it ranked. And that way, even a layman user can see when they see that it has all 3 boxes filled in, they'll know it's pretty common, right? And of course, this one is quite frequent according to the 3 lists that we consulted. And of course, we have the pronunciation.
Winko, Vincere.
And the Oxford Latin Dictionary, in which case we have 2 separate pages. And all of these data, these images are loaded natively on the site. And for normal people, they don't even have to know they're there. And here, thanks to our new integration partner, we have conjugation tables. If you've ever studied Latin, you'll know that this is an absolute savior. It provides every form of the verb in all of the tenses, and you can switch between the passive form and the participles. And these are very critical tools for students, and of course our data integration partner there is Cactus 2000. Going to a noun, we have the word vir, which is man. Then we have more grammatical information and more example sentences and declension tables. And let's say we want to do a search. We just type in a search box whatever word we want or whatever we're looking for. And on our search results page, we can actually see a familiar experience similar to using Google. And we also get the pronunciations on every page. But wait, there's more. What we've also done is we decided we wanted to make our own grammar. So what we did is we took the best grammars, Wheelock's and a few others, and then we consolidated them into one, and you can learn all the important stuff that you have to. You can get these nice tables that some people have to use. So that's the demo, and we're really proud of it, and we think it's swell. So what's the secret sauce here? Well, it's pretty basic. Just combine a bunch of books into one tool and try and replicate the formats that have already been established and that are effective. And there are some colleagues or representatives of computer science which might say to you that, well, lexicographers and the field of lexicography is behind when it comes to technology. The lexicographers have to step it up, and the computer science people are kind of eager to write code. But I think it's the other way around. I think it's the computer science people, like myself, that don't appreciate the fact that lexicographers have put in a lot of work and it doesn't get appreciated because it's done so well, it's kind of an afterthought. So for example, the way we structured our entries is fully derived from what Oxford Latin Dictionary did or from what Wheelock's Latin did. And so we think it's a remarkable tool that we've built, but let it be known that it's indicative and representative of the glory of lexicography, not computer science. It's the lexicography that makes it a great tool because it addresses the needs of users of all skill levels. And those are findings and formats that come from lexicography, not computer science. Excuse me. In the future, we want to build more of these dictionaries, and we want to work with all the resources that are in these other languages, and we want to find out what their needs are and build something customized for each language. And to summarize everything we've covered here, ancient languages like Latin have special needs. We created Allo, which is a digital dictionary platform that combines books like this and other resources. Allo Latin, it's available to the public. It's our first publicly available complete dictionary. And it's a product of lexicography first, plus computer science. And the team that worked on this was myself, a developer that helped me out named Constantine, Lorna, God bless her, she did almost all the data entry, and of course, our little emotional support team member. Allo is a project that's run by the Omega Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit who's got a similar relevant mission. And I thank you all very much for your time, and it was an honor to present at this prestigious conference. Excuse me. And I look forward to all of your questions. Thank you.
It's an amazing platform, and the architecture and the interface is just amazing. Very well done. I'm wondering if you're going to make that available to, I got to think that something along these lines, would be useful for other kinds of uses, and if it's going to be licensed or anything like that, so it can be built on or used by others.
Sure. So if I understand your question correctly, you're asking if we have any future plans, either for licensing or otherwise, sharing the technology.
Yes.
So, because it is run by the Omega Foundation, it's a 501c3 nonprofit, we have no plans to put ads or monetize it, otherwise than to keep ourselves running, and we haven't asked anyone for money yet. And we do plan on writing some technical specifications and adding more user features as time goes on. It just has to be done in phases. So for example, right now there's no mechanism to register. We don't even want your personal information. How's that? But yeah, we do have plans to share some technical papers like we have with all of our other open source projects. And there's nothing about it that's proprietary. I'm happy to share the code base and distribute all the information that I have and that we've learned to everyone. I hope that answers your question. Go ahead.
So I'm a first year Latin student right now, and I know that for me, one of my major difficulties is if I looked up an inflective or derived form of the verb, often on my Latin dictionaries don't bring up accurate information, because you have to know the base or the stem. Does your platform address this in any way, or?
Sure, so if I understand your question correctly, what you're saying is that other Latin resources provide information that's not accurate. Is that?
You can't find it with the inflected form. It doesn't come up.
Sure. So our data integration partner, which we showed earlier, was called Cactus, and they provide all the different inflected forms, and they made this by means of writing rules. So for example, if it's a verb of this stem, then it'll take on this infix, and so forth. And of course, that works for the majority of them, but you do have a number of very important what are called irregular verbs. And we manually check the irregular ones, but also let's not forget that there are certain aspects of the language that are debated. So for example, one case in Latin used to be the locative case. You would end a word and it indicates movement to or fro, location with certain verbs. But now that's not a thing anymore, so you have to kind of do the best you can. Who's the next question?
So in your last comment, it sounded like they're using finite state transducers to power the search with an inflectional form to get it back to the what most dictionaries would have as a head word. Is that correct?
I'm not exactly familiar with the first word you said about finite state transformers, but the way I understand it is that search box goes through all the fields of data that we have. And we're adding new ones, and whenever we add a new piece of information like a new data field, then it is accessible through search. And we move a little bit slower with advancing search capability because speed is our #1 priority. So for example, you'll see in our search box autocomplete, there aren't English translations yet, but there will be very soon. It's because it's a duplication of efforts, it's just pure processing time. But eventually, we're going to get much more functionality into the search feature, which is really the main one. So I thought that was an excellent question. I hope I answered it.
Yes.
A few questions. How did you deal with the legal issues of using Oxford Latin Dictionary and the other books? How did you deal with the legal issues of using those books? That's one question. Is the Oxford Latin Dictionary searchable not just by the head word, but by the contents of the definitions? And are you able to make use of maybe Google Books in terms of getting data sets of the writings of Latin or these other languages that have been scanned in?
Sure, I really appreciate the tough but very fair questions. The Oxford Latin Dictionary does not want to share the PDF document. They don't want to share, and you have to get institutional access. Upon review of copyright law, it comes to pass that there's a provision called fair use. And the fair use provision indicates that we can use up to 20 to 25% of the entire book. So that would be a few hundred pages. 400 pages. And for our purposes, we don't even use 400, because we're only picking the top 1,000 high frequency words. So to answer your question, it is fair use. And because it's a nonprofit, we don't make money, we don't run ads. They've never sent us a cease and desist letter. And we're very thankful that they're allowing us to make this great tool to encourage more innovation. And to the second part about using Google Books, we have an issue of finding some of these resources online. So what we did was we actually built our own library for the Onica Foundation. It's called the Onica Library. We have our own reader technology. It's where those pages were posted. And for integration with Latin texts, this is exactly the purpose of the Onica Foundation. Its mission is to digitize and make freely available all the world's mythological stories. We have artifacts, myths, summaries, the full texts, and down the line, our plan is to integrate the dictionary with those actual texts. So when you're reading and you click on any word, it'll just pop up, and those data will be fed from Allo into the Onica website.
I'm just curious how you can be so sure of the pronunciations.
That's another very tough but fair question. And the answer is we can't. It's because nobody knows what it sounded like, and it's a dead language. But there's some evidence that gives us a lot of confidence that there were no C's, there were K's, and it's W instead of V. And one piece of evidence, or the best piece of evidence, believe it or not, it's a historian from China. He went, this Chinese historian during the Roman era, he went to Rome and he kept these magnificent journals. And what he did was he spent a lot of time trying to explain and write in Chinese what it sounded like. So that's actually where we get most of our confidence that we know what it sounds like, even though we can't be sure. And the same is said for all ancient languages, as a matter of fact. But the second piece of evidence that we have is we see how languages change in the Proto-Indo-European family. So before we had English, we had Greek, Latin, so forth. If you go up and down the family tree, you see certain patterns of how consonants shift or vowels shift. And this is much more technical evidence, but it provides a little more scientific basis based on computational linguistics. But again, very firmly, we have no idea. It's just an educated guess. Thank you so much, everyone.